Web 3.0? I don't use that term.
Web 3 is the web without the middleman, so people owning their own data.
The Web 3 is this general movement towards decentralization.
I envision Web3 as being a new phase for the web that's going to slowly consolidate itself, and it's going to be a web in which people are much more in control of their data, of their privacy preferences, of their connections, and of the value that they're creating.
Blockchain is bringing an internet of value where people can communicate and manage value, anything from money to stocks to music to votes, peer-to-peer, in a secure and in a confidential way. And that's something that's truly revolutionary.
The original scope of Swarm was more like to complement Ethereum blockchain as the word CPU or the word processor, to complement it with the word hard disk to basically store data. However, most of these technologies turns out to be more generically usable to provide certain base layer infrastructure for the decentralized web.
In the current iteration of the web, usually all the interaction is constrained to a few big hubs through which everyone interacts, and all the rules of their interactions are specified by those hubs, and all the power lies within those hubs. So if Facebook wants to change the rules, they just change the rules, and then millions of people have to interact according to different rules. With Web3, the idea is to take a bunch of those technologies that we are developing, so blockchains, distributed storage, peer-to-peer messaging, and start building applications that enable us to act together and interact with each other in a more direct manner.
The hope is that decentralized systems will be more efficient because the evolving of the network will be a collective decision of all users. Whether this is true, it's impossible to say.
Mist is our attempt on being an experimental browser on what we believe can be the new decentralized web, right? When you type an address, you're connecting to the DNS system, which gets your name and turns that into an IP address. That's a problem because, first of all, it doesn't tell anything about the content, it just tells you about where to find it, right? Just imagine that instead of me suggesting a book by the cover or by the title, the only way you can find it is you go to that place, that library, second row, take the book, read the third page, it's a beautiful poem. That's not how you suggest other people to read stuff, right? Because if someone takes that book out, then nobody can read it anymore. And that's how our web currently works. When you type a name into Mist, it will download that app from everyone else that is using Mist at that moment to connect to that app. Now, because your private information is kept on your side, it's not kept on any particular server, you control your own information.
As you know, like just person who is introduced to the web as a kid, I've never thought about privacy, and I think that's the very same understanding that majority of people have nowadays. So they actually don't know that when they are browsing Facebook, they are, just selling their personal data.
How do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
I see.
So advertisers used to pay a lot more for advertising in newspapers and television than they do on the web because there's just this huge amount of attention in the web. Companies basically have to be better and better at getting data from their users so that they can justify charging higher prices for specific segments of their audiences to advertisers. And this pushes these big corporations into what some researchers have called surveillance by default, the model in which these corporations operate.
Your user agreement sucks.
These new models allow us to cut out middlemen like Google, who
who really get a say in who wins in every direction while they take a huge cut and sell your private information.
I'm going to suggest to you that you go back home and rewrite it.
Now we can sell our own private information and piece of that information when we so choose to.
In this moment in history, I really see that privacy is being lost every day. I mean, we just don't realize that.
This quote around free speech wing of the Free Speech Party was never a mission of the company. It was never a descriptor of the company that we gave ourselves. It was a joke.
And if we can create a society that empowers the person to have control of their lives, their money and their privacy, and then we have accomplished a lot.
Okay, so I guess governments work in a particular way already. They're kind of like really big computers, except instead of having like logic gates and electrons, they have like people and desks. If we turn all of that process into electronic processing, so like machines to process it all, it becomes a lot more adaptive. You can be sure that the rules will be followed. Like for example with tax, you can be sure that the tax rules will be followed if it's a machine that's actually executing them, and that the computation that's done is open and transparent, or at least has a proof that it's been done faithfully. We're taking what we're already doing anyway, and we're going to slowly sort of automate it or automate it so that machines do it for us. I think from there on, it will evolve and evolve and evolve in the same way that we took what we did anyway, write letters, digitized it, Twitter, Facebook, you know, these are all just nuanced versions that in many respects evolved or iterated from the original translation of the physical world into the digital world. We will initially try to replicate the current human-based systems into the blockchain, the digital, the autonomous world, and then slowly over time they will evolve and they'll take greater use of the fact that this platform is so much more efficient. We can be so much more adaptive and so much more inventive. Our tapestry can be so much more complex with these tools that we now have.
Oh wait, the whole idea of decentralization or disintermediation. Oh crap, that's a good one. I haven't.
I guess there was no real initial point where I suddenly switched from like, oh, centralized is really bad. But if I were to say there was, I guess, a particular transition, it would probably be in early 2013. I saw the technology of Bitcoin and I wondered if, given that exchanges were centralized, if this was going to be a structural problem for the future of Bitcoin. But that said, even before then, in general, in the more sociological sense, I had always been skeptical of, let's say, the accrual of power by relatively few elements in society.
I think it really started in politics. We talk a lot about what went wrong in past governments, right? What happened in China during the Cultural Revolution and what happened in Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge. Those are radically different governments, but they ended up doing the same kind of stuff. Someone having bad ideas and killing a bunch of other people. At some point, one person had too much power.
Technology generally allows us to do an awful lot more with an awful lot less. With a very good example of being a nuclear bomb, which allows us to bomb an awful lot of the world with relatively minor action. I view this as being a tacit form of centralization and a very dangerous one.
I try to see politics from a software development perspective. If I was trying to codify that, if I was trying to make that as a software, where are the pain points? How we can upgrade it, right?
Democracy is failing. Young people aren't voting, and all around the world they agree with the bumper sticker, don't vote, it only encourages them.
Citizens everywhere, they are losing confidence in their representatives. The Brazilian Constitution says that if 1% of the voters get together and support a draft bill, that draft bill must be accepted by Congress as if it was proposed by a Congress member. To get 1% of the Brazilian voters, you need around 1.6 million signatures at the federal level.
And you even have the problem of how to audit these signatures, right? Mudamos is a platform so that voters can use their cell phones in order to subscribe to a draft bill. Only by word of mouth, Mudamos has been downloaded by 500,000 people already. And this is amazing because it shows that there is a huge demand to use the blockchain to enable civic and democratic participation.
We're not talking about delivering services electronically or something like that. We're talking about changing the deep structure and architecture of government, bringing about a whole new era of transparency, a culture of public deliberation, active citizenship.
A vote is just a coin. A vote is nothing more than an anonymous transfer of some kind of token. It applies to a lot of other use cases that we haven't thought about.
But on most cases, when we are talking governance today, we're talking about use cases and applications that need scale and that need privacy in a way that current blockchains simply cannot provide.
Basically, a lot of things which you theoretically can do in a decentralized manner are simply too expensive to do in this way. So you don't have to globally coordinate everything.
The idea of using ad hoc servers from anywhere on the internet to do storage for you has not yet worked.
Blockchains will have trade-offs. I think with the knowledge we have so far, and with the technology we have so far, I think it's impossible for us to have a perfectly secure, cheap, fast, with unlimited capacity blockchain.
Bitcoin and Ethereum can't solve the scaling problem. Everybody has their ideas about how they'll solve it, but nobody knows if it'll actually work. We don't know if Lightning Network will work to solve the scaling problem. We don't know if sharding will work.
I think it's really worthwhile to get these concepts proved as soon as possible, regardless of whether they can really be placed into production. Because if you wait until the infrastructure is there for the browsing experience to be perfectly decentralized, then ultimately everything's going to take an awful lot longer because you'll have to do all of that experimentation after you've finished doing all of the initial development for things like Swab and IPFS.
We've been trying to build this vision for the next web for the past 4 years maybe. It's like we've been telling we want to build a rocket and want to go to space. And we've been trying to build that rocket to go to space, and I think the latest MIS release is the first ever that we were able to build a rocket that gets us there. But then that particular first rocket is not the best rocket ever, right? It's slow, it's heavy, it's expensive, it's complicated, but it's almost a proof that that can happen, right? We've been there, we are here, this thing can happen, this thing is going to happen.
Golem is this platform that creates a market for computational power. Like you can share your own computer and transfer it to the network, get some cryptocurrency back for that.
So what we do with Farm City is create context, like I need a ride, for instance, would be like a hashtag, that's how we call context. And within that context, you always do the same type of transaction. For instance, a drive from point A to point B, or dog walking, where you would help somebody out walking with his dog.
We're making progress. I know that many people are disappointed that it's not as fast as we expected. However, we are moving towards it.
It just gives me meaning, like in life, that I can contribute to that. To me, it's nothing more than that. I know that some of the stuff we have written will be forever in Ethereum, right? Maybe we fail, and maybe in 10 years, I don't know, maybe in a year, then somebody else, like another dev team, picks it up and says like, they were onto something. Or maybe we just train developers by doing this, right?
I do want to be part of part of something big, which is gonna, maybe it will become the next internet. Maybe the internet Web.3 is also gonna be broken, like the 2.0, and we will need internet 4.0.
If you see it, right? If you see this crypto world, if you see it for what it is, like really see it, don't think you're crazy. We're actually writing code, and we're coming up with ideas that are so out there, and it's because of this technology. But don't think you're crazy. If it doesn't work out, then you can look back and say like, yeah, maybe I was crazy. Okay, but don't let it stop you, at least, right?
Once you can make people realize that
they can start to organize themselves in such a way that they don't need any higher instance looking over them. I think that can be interesting.
What if we succeed but get it wrong? What if we build really cool stuff but it actually makes it all worse? So it is possible right now for an authoritarian government to get access to some of these treasure troves of data and just sort all of the people by how likely are they to disagree with the party. And just, find the top 0.0001% and disappear them and keep going. That level of control, I don't think we've ever seen before. It's kind of terrifying. And so this could turn out pretty poorly. And so if we don't succeed, if we don't build systems of communication that are able to have, the crypto shield, if we don't get that in place fast, then we might have a future that is pretty dark.
Many times people have said to me, you guys are going to dominate, you guys are going to take over the world. The whole point of decentralization is the exact opposite. We are building technology that we believe will make it impossible for any subset of actors to take over the world. Welcome to the decentralized future. Thank you.